Hello everybody, it is September and I am yet to do my August reading wrap up, and I've been desperately wanting to do it, but I've been on holiday in Greece for the last 10 days, I think. 9 nights, 10 days. So I obviously haven't been able to make this video, and I'm like starting to forget the intricacies of what I thought about all the books I read in August, so I am getting to do it quickly. However, I'm going to be doing it very cozy. As you can see, I'm in my pajamas, I've got some candles lit, I'm sat in bed. It really is just going to be like a nice little sit down, and it feels like the perfect way to welcome in the best season of them all, and that is autumn. So without further ado, I have 6 books to talk you through that I wrote, that I did not write these books, that I read in August. And yeah, I'm excited to share them to you. First book is basically a glorified July read, if I'm being honest. I started the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy in July and I absolutely fell in love with it. They become some of my favorite books, one of my favorite trilogies, possibly my favorite trilogy. It probably is my favorite trilogy, but I really have just fallen in love with these books. So I read the first one in July and I started The Ballad of Never After in July, but I didn't officially finish it till August 2nd. And the way my reads work is I count them as when I finish them. So if I finish a book in August, it's an August read. So even though I finished this over a month ago and it feels like a lifetime away, I'm counting it now. And then after that, I of course read A Curse for True Love, which is the third and final book in the trilogy. So I'm kind of going to talk about these together because it's obviously the same series and the same story split between multiple books. Like I said, this has quickly become like my favorite trilogy, some of my favorite fantasy stories, and really I have just fallen in love with this trilogy. Like Evangeline Fox as a main character, I adore so much. I love her so much. And I also found that like I thought that I'm sure I've said some channel before, but I swear I said for ages that I hated fantasy my entire life. I hated fantasy, I hated it, I bored it, my least favorite genre. And then I read, what did I even read? I think it might have been Let the Dark Stand Still or something like that. And it made me realise that I did like fantasy. I love fantasy. I just didn't like the fantasy that I've been reading. I don't remember what I read, but it was just not my kind of thing. I have found that I adore cozy fantasy, which I know is its own genre, but I mean like, I like spells and witchcraft and like magic baking and shit like that. I don't like war-torn political the orcs are battling the goblins. I don't know. Like, I read to escape all the horrendous political shit that's going on in our world right now. I don't need to read about fictionalized versions of it instead. So I really love The Ballad of Never After because it really is, like I said this to a friend who recommended the trilogy to me. Like I said, like it feels like a fairy tale for us now that we're growing up. Like it really feels like reading a kid's like book that you would have been read as a child, but now it's for kind of the new age. So yes, these have spells and magical lands and like romance and fates, and they are just wonderful. It's the first time that I've tabbed books in like 2 years maybe, because I underline stuff in my books. I've always underlined stuff, but this is the first time that I've consciously gone through and tabbed pages because I know I'll want to go back and reread them. I agree with the common consensus that Ballad of Never After is the second and best book in the trilogy by far, and while A Curse for True Love is the worst book in the trilogy, it's not a bad book. I think I gave this 5 and this 4. Once Upon a Broken Heart I gave 4.5. Like, even the worst book in the trilogy is still an incredibly solid read that I loved so dearly. Like, I could just gush over this whole trilogy like all day. I adore them so much. Read them. And I read that trilogy in like 2 weeks, maybe less than that, less than 2 weeks. Like, I was addicted to it. So of course I had to do the logical thing and start the Caraval trilogy afterwards. And I know so many people are going to scream at me and be like, you didn't read Caraval first, you're supposed to read Caraval first. When I bought Once Upon a Broken Heart, I didn't even know it was by the same author as Caraval, okay? Leave me alone. I finished the first book and was like, oh fuck, there was another trilogy I was supposed to read first. Whoopsie daisy. So you're gonna have to bear with me. It wasn't a conscious decision that I made to read Ballad of Never After and Once Upon a Broken Heart first. So yeah, I read Caraval and I don't know what to say about it because it's one, I think I gave it 4 stars and like it's a really solid read, but just I think I set my standards too high after Once Upon a Broken Heart because I read it again in like less than a week. I sped through it and it was one of those where I didn't like it. I'm not saying I disliked it, but I didn't like it, you know what I mean? And then like looking back on it, it was an engaging and good book. So I was like, then why do I feel this way? And I really think it is just because Once Upon a Broken Heart is such an amazing trilogy that my standards were just set way too high to go straight into Caraval. So yeah, I had weird feelings about it, but it was in no means a bad book, and I really liked it. After that, I ended up in a slump. I don't really remember why, but I was. So I went back to CJ Drew's Don't Let the Forest In, and I think I got halfway through this and I gave up on it. I'm gonna be so real with you guys. I had Hazelthorn on pre-order, which is their new book that's coming out in October. I think it's coming out on Halloween. I had it on pre-order just because the covers are stunning. If you've seen the Hazelthorn cover, it's absolutely gorgeous. But really, the covers are a fucking catfish because the books do not live up to their covers. They're just... I'm not going to call it boring because that's mean and not true, but I can't think of a better word. It's just one of those where it was one of those books where you go, something interesting will happen soon, something interesting will happen soon, and then something interesting happens and you're like, see, I told myself, and then it lasts a page and it goes back to being boring and you're like, okay, so when's the next interesting bit? Yeah, it was a big letdown, which I'm quite sad about. I tried reading this, I think this was like my third time trying to read this book, and I have officially given up. It's not good. I didn't like it. I'm not gonna get Hazelthorn. I would not recommend it, even though it has a pretty cover. Hello, Editor Ash here. I'm just popping in quickly to interrupt and say that I know in August I said that I was going on holiday with my friends, and I did do that. We went and we stayed in his caravan in Pwllheli, and I took a bunch of books with me, and I could not get into any of them. It was in that slump that I mentioned. I took Heartless by Melissa Mayer, and I don't remember. Teacher of the Year by M.A. Wardle, Heartless by Marissa Mayer, and The Serial Killer Next Door. I don't remember who it's by, but it was a true crime book on serial killers in society. Out of all of them, I think I read Teacher of the Year the most. I read like 60 pages of that, and I read like the first entry in Serial Killer Next Door. And it really was just one of those where I only took 3 books with me, and just none of them were what I needed to read at that time. So when I thought I was going to read loads in this caravan, I actually read literally nothing. So that's why none of those are featured. And then because I was still in my slump after that, I was like, you know what, I've taken some time away from the Caraval trilogy, I think it's time to come back. So I decided to pick up Legendary, and I didn't finish Legendary again. I read like 2/3 and I gave up. Yeah, where Caraval was a good book, this was just okay, and it was one of those where I already didn't take to Caraval that much. I really wasn't taking to Legendary. The only reason I was pushing myself through this was because I wanted to see more of Jax. Obviously, it's like, it's basically like his pre-stuff. What's the word? Like origin story. Literally, I was just reading this book for Jax, and he was not in it anywhere near enough for it to keep my attention. And also, I had Legends Identity spoiled for me really early on, which is like, if you don't know, the big mystery of the whole trilogy is Legends' real identity, and I got it spoiled for me when I was looking at Once Upon a Broken Heart stuff. I wasn't even looking at Once Upon a Broken Heart stuff, it was just like, oh, so you like Stephanie Garber, guess what? So it was one of those where like Jax wasn't in it enough for me to care, and its main thing that keeps you hooked in wasn't keeping me hooked in because I knew what it was. There was no mystery for me to follow because it had been solved. And again, I spoke to the same friend that she loves Once Upon a Broken Heart. She recommended it to me. She's the reason I read it. I'm so grateful to her. I was talking to her about it at our prom and being like, thank you for getting me to read these. It was such a good trilogy. Oh my god, she's absolutely lovely. But I was like, okay, so I have to know, what's your opinion on Caraval? Because like I've read the first, I was like, what? No, I just said that. I was like, what's your opinion on Caraval? Like I need to know, as someone who likes Once Upon a Broken Heart, what did you think? And she was like, I couldn't finish the second book. I was like, me too! So like just these like the coincidence that we both couldn't make it through Legendary, I think reassures me that I'm not just riding the high of Once Upon a Broken Heart still, and this just isn't the trilogy for me. Maybe I will read Finale one day when I have like nothing else on my shelf to get to. I'll pick up Finale, but I didn't even finish this, so I don't want to pick up a book where I actually like don't really know where in the story I am. Also, a lot of people say, like, if you read Caraval and you don't like Tella, don't read Legendary because she becomes the main character. And it's one of those where I don't even dislike Tella, because I saw somebody say that and I was like, you know what, I kind of get it. She's not my favourite character, but I can understand her. Like, it wasn't even that, it was just a boring book. And of course, that brings me on to the last book that I read in August, and that was Sorcery and Small Magics by Mike Ducey. I hate hardbacks. I've definitely said this before. I hate hardbacks with a passion. I wish when a book comes out they release it as like a hardback for the regular hardback time, but they also release it as a paperback so you can choose which one you get. And if you want the hardback as like a collector, you can get it. I don't like hardbacks. I hate them. They're heavy. They are impossible to hold. They don't fit in any books, bags. They don't fit in any bags. Just, I don't like hardbacks. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to make the exception because I've heard such good things about this. It was discounted. I was like, you know what? I'm going to cave. I just really want to read this. Also, when I looked on Amazon, it had the option to select mass market paperback, but it didn't have a date because usually when the hardback comes out, you can still pre-order the paperback. It didn't even have a date for the paperback, and I was like, you know what? I really want to read this book, and I don't even know when it's going to come out, so I'll just cave and get it in the hardback. And that I did. This book was good, but I skimmed the last couple chapters, I won't lie to you. And really, I don't think I missed much. Like, I read the last couple chapters, but there was like there to there, maybe, like I just skimmed through, and I really don't feel like I missed anything. This book, like, my main thought on it was that it set itself up for so many cool opportunities and then just did not take them, and it kind of fell flat that it just was not seizing all these things that it was setting up for itself. While the story is still solid and good, it didn't take risks, man. Like, you can read the story anywhere, and the whole point of it is that it's these two academic rivals who don't like each other, and one of them gets cursed, so they have to obey everything the other one says. And I thought it was going to use that so much, and it didn't. Like, he has to obey maybe 2 things that Grimm says, and they're things where he's like, oh wait, he's like, wait here a minute, never mind. It's like, if you've ever seen Ella Enchanted, it's like that, where when he says like, oh wait here, don't move, and she's like ends up stood in the road and she can't move. It's stuff like that, but as soon as he catches himself saying this stuff, he immediately is like, never mind. So the whole crux of this book is that, what even is his name? Leo Vander. So Leo has to obey everything that Grimm says, but Grimm never fucking tells him to do anything, so what's the point? And actually the thing is that they can't be too far apart from each other, and I'm like, so just say that from the get-go. Don't tell me in the blurb that his curse is that he has to listen to everything, do everything Grimm says, when it's actually that he can't be away from Grimm without it, like, hurting and exhausting him. You've lied to me. Like, yeah, it's just, well, like I say, it's a good book. It just feels misleading, and there's so many opportunities that it just does not take, and it really feels like it just takes the safe option at every turn. And this book could have really been something, a real 5-star read, if it just took more risks. And I'm aware what I'm saying is super mean, because this is Micah Ducey's debut. It's going to be the first book in the Wildesong trilogy. But honestly, I have no inclination to read the next Wildesong books because this one was just underwhelming. But like I say, it's a debut. I'm sure the others will likely be better. You know, Ballad of Never After was better than Once Upon a Broken Heart, so who really knows? But yeah, that was my opinion on Sorcery and Small Magics.